Welcome back to Understanding CBD. That's Eye of the Tiger, Survivor. And you know why that is inspired by our next guest here. By the way, this is Understanding CBD. I'm Stephen Wallman.
I'm Max Sobel.
We got Max Sobel right there. If you'd like to call in at all to speak to our guests, because we are live today in the studio, you can call 410-922-6680 to talk to us, or if you have any questions for our awesome guest. Other than that, our number 443-743-2444. Call, text, whenever. Max and I just finished watching this film, Unprescribed. Right, Max?
Fantastic.
Fantastic, mind-blowing. And you know how that song makes you feel, The Eye of the Tiger, where your blood's boiling and it's ready to go.
That's
and you're
how
ready
I felt.
That's how I felt when I finished watching that movie. So for our listeners and everyone here, you must see this film. But anyway, it's produced and directed by our next guest, Steve Ellmore. Steve is an Air Force vet. A YouTube star known as the Geek Guy. I love those, actually. I watch them all the time. Max and I are old Amiga guys and Commodore geeks as well. A filmmaker at Allegiance Films, and just a great guy, everyone. Steve, welcome to the show today.
Guys, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And I got to ask you, just to start out, why this film, why this topic, and why now for you? Tell us about it.
Well, the film Unprescribed was a passion project born out of a personal a personal need, a desire to learn more. The idea came to me from a couple of veterans who wanted me to document a grow they were doing in the Midwest, and I, being a veteran who supports other veterans in my films, I thought, sure, but I kind of chuckled because they were talking about a marijuana grow, and we were both Air Force vets, and all our career, that was like a
no-no.
Big no-no, yeah.
So, I listened to them and so on and so forth. It kind of fell through on their end with the budget, but in talking with these guys, I learned so much, and I realized with my own anxiety and a suicide attempt I had during my active duty time, I thought, why are this being kept from us, and how could I have not known this? And so I made it a personal goal to produce this film and tell the story of veterans who are suffering from trauma and a handful of, taking so many pills for every product they have, and here one plant can take care of that. So that was my hopes and goals.
Yeah, well, it looks successful. If you look it up on Rotten Tomatoes, it's 100%.
Wow.
I'm
not surprised.
The reviewers have everything good to say, and everyone I've shared it with had the same feelings about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you sort of know it's happening, like deep down inside you kind of feel like it's happening, but when it's really brought in front of you, the way that you did, Steve, I mean, it's an eye-opener. My wife and I watched it together, and I think that, to your average person who doesn't think about the subject, it really brings it home for them, certainly, and I commend you for it.
Yeah, and an interesting thing is, who would you say needs to see this movie the most? If we were to, if our listeners are able to share this film with someone, who would you think that it needs to be in at their living room around the holidays?
Well, there's actually two audiences, because the first audience, the obvious audience, or excuse me, not the audience, the obvious one, but the veteran audience is number one. They're the ones who are tuning into it and watching it and saying, thank you for telling our story. And this film just nailed exactly what they've been trying to say. So I'm trying to be a collective voice for the veteran audience. But we're only 1% of the population. We're trying to reach the other 99% of the population in states who are legal, for example, like in Maryland, because a lot of these veterans are dependent on their veteran benefits, or they may be federal employees, and by using cannabis, they will risk their jobs or their benefits.
Speaking of that,
we want to show the general public, especially those in legal states, that it's still a federal holdback, and that's what's stopping them from getting medicine.
So speaking of that, you're a federal employee, aren't you?
I am, yep.
Gotcha. So it's got to be, so it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's interesting because I was working at the Pentagon when I first started this film, and I had the opportunity, because I work in public affairs, to speak with the film production crew on if this is okay to make it. And they said, as long as I'm not shooting are not working on government time or putting bad words about the military in it, I'm okay to do it. And so, working at the Pentagon, it was a shame looking at, talking to these other vets who were having similar experiences to me and not being able to benefit from it because of an outdated federal law based on, outdated
lack of understanding,
yeah,
for sure.
And I could tell by the way you said it's only 1% of the population. Is that a lot of the pushback it seems that you get? Is just people don't seem to care because it's not enough? It does not personally touching enough people? Like, because it's only 1% of the population, people don't know enough people in their family that this is impacting? Could that really?
Well, as a matter of fact, I think the veteran perspective we showed at the beginning with actual war scenes from one of the veterans. I think it's an eye opener for the rest of the audiences to understand that trauma is trauma, and we're just showing it on an extreme scale. So think about it. We've got housewives who are taking opioids and antidepressants and all these other medications with something that they could naturally treat. We've got we got anybody from college kids to elderly. There's so many different things that this can take
I mean,
care
Steve,
of.
the winter solstice is tough on me. Okay, it's cold. It's cold in the morning.
Yeah, the solstice.
No,
is
but
tough.
but in a serious note, I mean, all those things we talk about are all valid. And then Steve's message that he's bringing is a topic that isn't really talked about enough. Is on top of the normal struggles that people have when you go to battle. You have layers of different physical and mental traumas.
Indeed. For our listening audience, I just want to remind everybody we're speaking to Steve Ellmore. He's filmmaker, director, producer of Allegiance Films, and the film that we are speaking about is called Unprescribed. Steve, you touched on this a little bit. I watched you. I know you were at the Emerge Cannabis Conference, and I watched your talk. I appreciate that. One of the things that you brought up that I thought was really interesting, and our audience would probably be interested in, would be this concept of polypharma versus what you call polytrauma. So would you mind educating us on that?
Yes, absolutely. So the Emerge Cannabis Conference we just spoke at was our subject was Unprescribed, Breaking the Polypharma Cycle. And I talk about in the film, or a gentleman in the film called Boone Cutler, one of the soldiers, he talks about polytrauma, and that's having all these different ailments. I mentioned before, sleep, psychology, anxiety, PTSD, physical things, everything else. And the doctors there's so many of them, they don't know what to do, so they throw a different drug at every different thing, hoping to, satisfy, all the ailments they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's polypharma.
Mm-hmm.
But they're treating the effects of polytrauma.
Right.
So trauma could be physical or emotional, or anything in between.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And back to your point about veterans, we should probably mention that there's some significance to your movement and some of the stuff that you've been specifically talking about 22 a day. We've had Eric Stamper, a good friend of the show, and he runs an organization called Veterans Initiative 22. So we understand what that 22 means. Maybe you could quickly educate the audience too.
Absolutely. In fact, that's what I first opened up with about why this film was made, why there was a personal connection. And as I mentioned earlier, mid-career, I had a suicide attempt. And the 22 that Veterans Initiative 22 refers to is the reported average of 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide every day. And so that number sometimes has been debated as low, they've said as low as 17, but in my opinion, one is too many. And so trying to address that, like Eric's doing here in Maryland, is we're trying to create awareness of this, and that sort of exactly plays into what my film is about, is trying to create awareness that trauma can be treated, and so can all these other ailments that we have through one natural plant. And so that's where we are with that. How it ties into the suicide prevention is because a lot of the medications they're on, especially some of the ones that are used for treating PTSD, can lead to suicidal ideations. And so you see in my film, there's a young Marine that took his life, and we have his mother, Janine, telling the story of Johnny about how he was taking all these different medications, and there was so much, there was some confusion in his records, and they put him right back on a drug that was already noted in his records that was giving him thoughts of killing himself. And he did. And so, unfortunately, he's no longer with us. So that's the fight we're trying to fight.
Yeah, and coming from your perspective, where you weren't a cannabis fan in your life, it came to you as a solution that you found later in your life. What would you say? Because we do this show a lot, not for people that already know about how great of a plant it is, but more for people that don't. And what do you have to say to them that may just give them what your experience is, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I can tell you firsthand that I have been a cannabis user prior to my military service. It's something I did regularly. I preferred it over booze, but then I switched to the alcohol on active duty. And then when I got out of it, I tried it a couple of times, which also led to me not getting a job with the security clearance and so forth. So, and again, part of my personal argument for why this needs to be legalized. Why should we be prohibited from doing something that is actually making us more efficient? But I have discovered CBD has been a useful tool in soothing the nerves and anxiety and filling those CBD receptors, those CB, I can't remember the receptors in our systems, CBN, no.
CB1?
Yeah, CB1 and CB2, thank you. But these are receptors in our body that just like, iron deficiencies, if we don't feel well, our body needs something like that. And it's sort of, the thing with CBD is you don't get any high off of it. You just sort of feel it taking the effect, taking the edge off of some of those nerves and those jitters.
Yeah, and that's how we explain it to a lot of people. We explain that it's, all the benefits of cannabis without the intoxicating effect.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the reasons why people are afraid is because they think they would get stoned from it. Yeah. It's probably one of the biggest things. And the second thing, I think people are concerned about it if it's legal, right? Are they going to get in trouble?
Right.
Right.
Which actually another thing that Steve, you opened my eyes to at the when I listened to you when your fireside chat at the Emerge conference was you mentioned that the Israeli army now has a different stance about this. Can you enlighten us here?
Yeah, the Israeli army and the Canadian service. They both provide,
Mazel tov, eh?
Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. Here. In my film, we have Dr. Sue Sisley, who's the only federally approved research trying to find the efficacy in cannabis for treating PTSD. And so a lot of veterans that have been, through anecdotal information, it's been a universal, astounding support that, yes, it's calming us down, it's helping our anxiety, it's treating our PTSD. And so, I'm sorry, I kind of got a little bit lost.
No, we were talking about the fact that Israel and Canada are becoming more. Yeah.
So what better tool to use for your people who are actually actively in combat to calm the soul, to calm the nerves? I mean, let's face it. Back in World War II, we used to give packs of cigarettes in the field rations. Why? Because it calmed our nerves. Today we know that it's full of nicotine and all these other bad things that cause our body harm. But we haven't found really any negative chemicals in the cannabis plant or the hemp plant.
Yeah, and if there are, please call us here at 443-743-2444.
In the meantime, go Israel, go Canada. Let's see what happens.
Yeah,
right?
and let's support what we can do in the U.S. here, and on many fronts, federal, local, state. It's
Steve. We're coming to close to the end of our segment. I wanted you to give the audience an opportunity to sort of let them know where they can find your film, how they can access your film, how they can view it, and certainly how they can help you or get in touch with you if you'd like.
Absolutely. The best place to start is to go straight to my website. That's allegiancefilm.com. My company's Allegiance Films, but somebody already got that website. So allegiancefilm.com/unprescribed. Right there you'll get all the information on where you can watch it, which includes Amazon and UrbanFlix TV. That's a new streaming service that's available on most streaming devices, from Roku to Fire Stick.
Steve, thank you very much. We appreciate you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being our guest.